It's an interesting phraseology in the Pasuk, this week's Parsha. It says, Daber na ba'oznei ha'am, speak to the ears of the people, to Klal Yisrael, v'yishalu ish me'es re'eyo, and each person should ask from their friend, v'isha me'es re'usa, and a woman from her friend, kli chesed v'kli zav, ask them for gold and silver. And if you don't think we're realizing we're not discussing one yid to another, rather we are discussing a Jew asking from their fellow Egyptian, asking from their neighbor. But instead of calling them neighbors, we're calling them their friend. And who in the right mind? Number one, they were calling Goyim to begin with friends, which normally in the Torah we see clearly it's Ri'eyu. And we always come to Lafuka, we come to exclude those who are not Yid. But here we're calling them our friends. But what's even more shver, which is even perhaps more of a kasha, is that the Torah itself, in Parshat Shmois and Perek Gimel, Pasuk Chav Beis, tells us V'sho'ala isha mishchenta, and each woman will ask her neighbor. Why over there does it refer to the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim, as a neighbor? Yet over here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe to tell Klal Yisrael to ask from their friends. The Netziv says something which is astounding. The Netziv explains that at first, of course, the Mitzrayim were enemies. They were here to kill us, they were here to afflict us, and to oppress us with the worst of possible punishment. But yet when we left each other, it was with tremendous friendship. And he says what happened was as follows. He says during the 3 days of Choshech, when the Mitzrayim couldn't work, and they couldn't move, and they couldn't eat, and they couldn't drink, who fed them? Who sustained them? It was none other than their enemies, than the Yidden. And the Jews came ahead and went to their neighbors, and gave them food, and gave them drink, and sustained them. During these 3 days, that's the only way the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, were kept alive. When the Mitzrayim saw, and that they realized that even though for the past months, and of course, for years really, that they were there to hurt them, and afflict them, and to cause them so much pain and grief. And after all that, the Yidden still went ahead and looked, their Atzelim Alikim, their creations, and we're here to help them, and we're here to give them food and to drink so that they should continue living. They were filled with such an overwhelming feelings of gratitude and understanding that these people obviously strive for something greater. And it's not just tit for tat, me versus you, survival of the fittest, but rather they believed in something more. So they turned these enemies, that were mere neighbors, into friends. So it says by Parshat Shmois, they were just neighbors. But after Choshech, they already became friends. And therefore it makes sense why we were discussing each person should go to his friend, and each woman should go to her friend to ask for the gold and silver. And if we think about it for a moment, we could learn something tremendous from what the Torah is trying to tell us. The same way the Torah tells us, if you see a load that has to be taken care of and given done chesed to, because it's too great for the person to do on their own, and there's one of an enemy and there's one of a friend, you do the enemy first. To try to work on yourself, to explain, to show that my midas have to be broken. Although I don't want to help this person out, I'm going to do it anyways. Because the Torah says we live for something higher. There's a greater purpose to our existence. And even to an enemy, and even to a Russia, and to a guy who does not look for the good in us. And it doesn't care if we exist another moment or not. But if we could sustain them, because we're greater than that, and we do good unto people even if they're not doing good unto ourselves. And we realize there's something higher, then we give them life. And when we give people life, because we emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mahu Racham Afator Racham, that somebody HaKadosh Baruch Hu could look at us and say, you're not giving me good, why am I giving you good? But rather as an Ava Racham, He gives us compassion, and He gives us life, and He sustains us in the greatest way possible, even though we're not deserving of it. So when we emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we do the same towards His creatures, be it animals, or be it even people who are doing not the greatest things towards us. And we turn ahead and we smile and we give them that life, then we sustain the world by emulating in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if we take this limud, we take this lesson, that the closer we get and the more we follow in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ways, and we look for the good in people, and even if we can't sometimes, and we still try to do whatever we can to them, and sustain them like the Yidden did to Mitzrayim, we too could turn our enemies into our friends. Have a wonderful Shabbos.